All right, all right. So I just got back from New York, man.
The Big Apple.
The
The
big,
biggest apple.
the biggest of all
The
apples.
biggest of all apples.
And it was interesting.
Yeah.
Halal cart and piss is all I gotta say.
One's good, one's very bad.
One is definitely very bad. But the food is fire.
Yeah, you had the OG halal guys. Now, how'd you find it?
I mean, there were
Is
so
it?
many people coming to our venue. We had a venue right on Wall Street
Yeah.
for Solana and our business Solana Spaces. And so people, especially founders, would come in every day and they would bring in food and drinks. So I got to try all kinds of, really cool stuff.
Yeah, that sounds. I mean, you were there for almost a month. So I can imagine being there with your Solana spaces, having halal guys. I remember New York being fun in those aspects.
Yeah, man. Yeah. That red sauce, dude, really tears that ass up.
I bet it does.
All right, let's get into it, boys.
And welcome to the first ever Debatable at Best podcast, the podcast where we talk about everything from global markets, the economy, life, maybe bad coffee, I don't know, but don't expect answers over here, just perspective. My name is Ray.
My name is Amol.
So what are we talking about today first?
Asset prices are high and no one is fucking happy.
And why do you think that is?
I think a part of it has to do with we have basically two economies now. One is where people are invested in the stock market are extremely happy, especially those invested in the Mag 7. That's where the abundance of the gains are coming. And then most of America is not really invested in the stock market. And you can kind of see, the main street of the country is kind of suffering.
Right. My kind of perspective on it is, while I don't want to say the rich are getting richer in spite of Main Street, I also don't want to say it's because of the whole, revolution with technology, everything that's been going on. I feel like there's a lot of gains being made on that. I feel like income disparity is really pushing in on this because if you have the money to actually invest, you'll do it. But a majority of these people that are getting hammered, arguably, one could say the middle class is the one being hammered. But I feel like the lower class, let's just call it that for argument's sake, is being hit pretty bad because they don't actually have the leftover cash, let's call it. They're getting hit hard on groceries. They're getting hit hard on other inflation related items. We can't afford cars, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But I feel like they're really just getting pushed further and further down in this, what we would call like a K economy, right? Rich keep getting richer, poor keep getting poorer.
Yeah. The K-shaped economy is pretty spot on. I do think that the middle and the lower income parts of the U.S. economy, the U.S. populace is definitely feeling a brunt of the pain. And I think the people at the top have sort of become a little bit more insufferable and quite possibly ignorant of how major empires and economies have previously toppled when the rich get too rich. And in fact, one could argue that we're probably coming to a precipice of that kind of point where people are facing enough pain and they might start going into the streets and burning shit down. We don't want to get to that sort of revolutionary point.
Yeah. It was funny. I was talking to someone not too long ago, actually, just last night. And he's more or less a boomer. Okay. So let's start with that. So just to give you an idea of where his mentality is, he was like, he was talking about his daughter and how she's having a little bit of a tough time. Like he does well off himself, but he's just like, my daughter and her husband, they make $200,000 between the two of them, but they're still having a hard time affording things, buying things. And, even the job market is sucking right now. So what do you do in a situation like that? And I was like, something that millennials, Gen Z, all these people are thinking about as a real possibility of something that could happen down the line is UBI, or universal basic income. And he just completely just went for argument's sake, berserk about like, oh, UBI could never work. You guys are too used to sitting in your laurels and like resting in your laurels and thinking you can just get paid for it. And what are people going to do if they're just paid to just sit around? And like, that's never going to work. And, on one side of the coin, it may be a realistic situation down the line.
I think UBI is inevitable.
Okay.
I think that a lot of people have effectively voted for Trump because he's the person who did the first UBI. It's like a airdrop into people's bank accounts of free stimmy checks, and he's also stimmies. He's also alluded to that, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But it is definitely a point of contention right now between what's happening to young people feeling like the light at the end of the tunnel is either not there, or they feel like it's increasingly diminishing,
Mm-hmm.
or at the same time they don't really know what else to do other than feeling like they're being left out of a large part of the gains that are being felt in the economy.
Mm-hmm.
Even if, like you said, you're making $200,000 a year, which is a lot of money,
Yeah.
you still feel like you're basically poor.
Right. Or you're just kind of making ends meet. Because another point that he made was like, well, when I was, kind of getting started, me and my wife, we weren't making 200, but we were making like 150, 170, like between that amount. And we could easily afford a house for 250,000. And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, 170 versus 250, it's less than double your income, the house that you bought.
Easy.
So, but if you're now your daughter and her husband, they're making 200 between the two of them, but they can't even find a house in an area that they want to live in for less than 800. So that's a 4x on just their 200.
And not
right?
to mention the other aspects of, costs going up, right?
Right.
On other things.
So do you think, and I feel like I already know the answer to this, but I just want to ask you, do you feel like Wall Street is super out of touch with Main Street? Do you think that's how it's always been, or do you think there's some times where they do work in lockstep?
I don't think they're out of touch. I do think that they are aware of the problem. They probably don't care. And I think that's how it's always been. Most of how economies at scale work is you will often have a very rich, wealthy upper 1% to 5% class, and then the other bottom 40 to 50% are really, doing their best to sort of scrape by. The problem is that we have this thing called the American dream, right? And the American dream is about having a job, being able to work in this country and still being able to put food on your table and make sure that your kids can go to college and have a better life, and you can afford your home, and you can have a good, I don't know, government that takes care of you. I think that social contract is breaking. And people are increasingly feeling like the government is not looking out for them. The people at the top are not looking out for them. And so why should they be direct contributors to the economy, in a proper way?
I don't know if anyone has ever felt like the top 1% was ever looking out for the bottom 99%,
I don't think so either, but I think that coldness has definitely accelerated, and it has become something of a very big divider in the country. And you don't want to get too far into that divide because things can get ugly. And again, this is how empires collapse, right? You will have the people at the middle or the bottom of the country truly have, disdain for the people at the top. And you don't want to get into the aspect of a revolution or, rich people getting killed or some shit.
Yeah, I mean, that's there. I also know like other things that I'm kind of hearing on the ground is, or at least, well, let me just step back for a bit. The same individual that I was talking to that said like, hey, my daughter can't afford blah blah blah. And this is just kind of an aside, but I thought it was really funny. He was also like, well, if you look at it, Tesla is like the most valuable company, like car company in the world. It's, market caps are passing trillions, XYZ. And, a discussion of like energies came up and we are talking about oil and gas. And he was like, if you look at, let's say, a company like Exxon, right, which essentially is powering the world, let's call it, right? I know this is a side tangent, but he's like, why is a company that's essentially powering the world worth less than a car company?
Yeah. And that's also a fair point too. I mean, I guess maybe one could argue that Exxon is not going to power the world as much as it used to. And maybe Tesla is more of a technology slash, EV company with potential to be the more dominant, autonomous vehicle. So there's obviously a form of speculation in that.
But let's add on to that another layer, right? The way that I know we're diverting a little bit, but if you look at the way energy is, right? And if you look at the history of energy in general, you never really do away with the previous form of energy. You just keep adding on, right? Like if you look at coal burning, right? We're burning more coal today than ever. We're burning more gas today or, petrol today than ever. And we didn't really completely get rid of coal. We just kind of added on with petrol. So do you think we're just going to continue adding on with, more or less batteries and electrons?
I think that the energy needs of all civilizations, are perpetually going up. I think that part is, it's like a non-contentious discussion, right? We know that our energy needs in especially American society are going up significantly, especially with data centers requiring more energy and AI and chips and all that stuff, right? So yes, we will probably use oil, but will we use it maybe the same if we deploy, I don't know, 50 nuclear power plants? Probably not. I don't know at what pace we're going to open up these power plants, especially nuclear, which, by the way, I'm a big fan of.
Oh yeah, you've talked about nuclear a few times off the show.
Dude, I'm so fucking bullish on nuclear. Like, I don't see any other way for humans to transcend into, like, let's just say the next level as a civilization unless we tap into nuclear more. But again, I'm sort of moving into a different topic, but I do think that oil itself is going to be a diminishing commodity. And I don't know if Exxon is like the perfect example of a company that can be compared to something like a Tesla.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about traditional oil and gas versus like a battery maker and software designer.
Yeah, exactly.
We move on to the next topic then.
Let's do it.
I guess since software and Tesla, the next kind of logical step in our path today is going to be artificial intelligence.
Oh shit, that AI.
Or my made up word for this, and I feel like if we can call this going forward, it'd be pretty funny, but I'm just going to call it fake smarts.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's an interesting word.
Yeah, we'll just, instead of calling artificial intelligence, let's just call it fake smarts. The fake smarts world.
I wonder how many people are using AI and they're getting like wrong information, because I've had so many times where I had to fact check AI itself and tell me to give it a source or tell me, hey, is this actually true? And it had to correct itself. So if you take AI's word at gospel, I don't know, you're probably just getting the wrong fucking information.
Well, the reason why I'm kind of bringing this up is, first of all, like you said, everyone's talking about it. But the second big thing is everyone's arguing over, is this a bubble? Is this a boom cycle? Is this going to be a bust cycle? Like, what are we talking about here? And I feel like a lot of people are just on one side or the other.
I don't know if we're near the bubble territory yet. I think we're getting close. I do think that the valuations are stretched. I do think there's a lot of financial alchemy, if you will, that's going on in these companies, malfeasance. But I think we got another solid 3 to 5 years of how wild bubbles can get.
Yeah. I actually don't know where I stand on the entire thing. The one thing that, the one case that's being made for, well, this is totally a bubble, is the simple fact on how much OpenAI says they're going to invest in infrastructure. So, again, using some simple numbers, I think they said they're going to invest or, build out $1.4 trillion worth of infrastructure. But if you look at their revenue numbers today, they're hovering around the double digit billions, right?
18
billion.
to 20 billion.
Yeah. So what they're effectively predicting is that, adoption is going to be so high that the $1.4 trillion investment is going to be worth it. A lot of people are like, you're talking multi-billion, so now single digit, sometimes double, I don't know if it's going to be close to double digit, but like trillions of dollars now, which has never been mentioned ever before. Like, companies are worth trillions, but you're saying you're going to spend trillions on infrastructure investments? How is that going to work if you theoretically would take years, if not never hit those returns on that investment? And that's why people sometimes think like, okay, this is definitely could be a bubble in the making, if not already getting up there.
I think companies definitely project far out into the future of how optimistic things can get, especially from like a spend perspective.
Right.
Because they're trying to imagine a future where things are going to be drastically different, say 3 to 5 years from now. But the reality is, I think it takes longer than a decade for truly the society itself to lap itself, right? And say, hey, the previous decade is unlike this one, and we've got truly revolutionary tech and, new learning skill set that you would need in 10 years that you would not have previously. And I think that if you look at it from a 10 to 20 year perspective, I could totally see that spend being justified. But near term, what these companies are spending, they're like drunken sailors, in my opinion. But that's always going to be the case with technology. It's kind of why bubbles form, why overspending happens, and then you get a reset.
Well, let me touch on two quick topics here now related to this. There's always this kind of what should we call it? Like a correlation made between what is happening right now in the AI market and what happened when like the internet was just coming up. Like they were saying that like, oh, telecom companies, they're laying too much fiber out in the world to ever reach the type of demand that, that we think is going to happen. And there was more or less, what they term it as dark fiber, right? So basically lines of fiber that just were never used, or they didn't think there was too much investment, too much layout, too much build out for the use cases at that time for the internet. And that's how more or less the .com bubble was for. It wasn't for the companies like Google or Microsoft. It was because it was more or less the failure of the telecom companies and their massive infrastructure build out of fiber across the nation to what would eventually fill the demand, but at that time it wasn't anywhere close to filling that kind of demand, right? I think what's a little bit different here is that, and again, this is more of like this is more of a bull case, but this is like, okay, well, the demand is already sky high. We're just filling in that demand with infrastructure this time, instead of building out abundant infrastructure and then letting people come to it. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, infra itself is always going to get the first dollar in, or they're going to try their best to, because they're the people who are sort of mapping out the future, right?
Hmm.
But again, I kind of go back to, if you look at the future in 10 years or 20 years, do I think that OpenAI has to be the company that is going to be, needing to spend billions, if not trillions, to stay at number one? I don't necessarily know. I wonder if there's going to be a usurping moment similar to a Yahoo and a Google, right? Maybe we haven't even seen the Google that is going to take over Yahoo, and similar to what OpenAI is, which is the Yahoo, and we don't know who the Google is, right? That could also be a thing, in which case OpenAI just wasted a bunch of fucking money.
Right. Well, here's a second part of the topic, right? Um, what we're seeing now has also never been done before, in that you have chip companies investing in AI software companies, and AI software companies in turn taking equity or ownership stakes in the chip companies, or vice versa.
It's a
That
big circle jerk, dude. That's exactly what it is. If you kind of study markets and history, you'll see that there's always some sort of, financial malfeasance that these companies go through, and they really are circle jerking each other, because that's exactly what it is. It's kind of like pumping each other's, forward projections.
is it like a? Do you think it's like a rob Peter to pay Paul kind of situation,
I,
or
I don't even know if there's robbing going on from each other. They're robbing everybody else. They're the ones who are kind of saying that, hey, um, you know, I'm gonna need 10 trillion or $10 billion worth of chips, and Nvidia says, oh look, we have like a, you know, future $10 billion order coming in, and then OpenAI can go back and say, hey look, we told Nvidia that we're gonna have $10 billion in chips being made, and there's gonna be this much need for power, and now OpenAI can get access to this many chips in X years, and it can grow by this much demand. They're Yeah, again, I don't know how people don't see through this bullshit, right? Obviously, people in the markets are finally, and you're going to get a correction in valuations, especially the public companies.
but that's an interesting point you just touched on, because valuations are sky high. A lot of people who are trading on this are essentially pumping the stock, more or less, right? Just for lack of a better term. Because look at where Nvidia sits today. Look at where AMD sits today. Look at where all these companies are sitting today. Very high.
They are definitely high. I can't definitively say that the current valuation is justified, but I don't know if I could say that it's high enough where this is bubble territory and everything has to pop. I do think that things can get a lot crazier. I don't think that we've seen the financial mania yet. And so I'm kind of holding out and thinking, give it like maybe another 2 to 4 years, and you're about to see shit really hit the fan.
Do you think you think within the next couple years you're going to see double digit drop offs, like significant corrections, or do you think it's going to be more or less like a gradual realization of like, okay, maybe we're not where we need to be at yet, but maybe we like, what do you think?
I mean, I would imagine that 2026 is probably just going to be a somewhat of a, you know, correction year. And then I think we just slowly glide on up in 27, 28, 29. Um, I think that's where things are going to get really crazy. The at the beginning of this decade, 2022, is when we really saw OpenAI come out and talk about, what this revolutionary ChatGPT product is. And if you give it a solid 5 years, projecting out, 27, 28, you're about to see hopefully wide scale use cases, as well as what kind of like value has it delivered to societies and companies. And that cycle does take, like, an average business cycle is 4 years. So I would imagine, like, 26, 27, you need to start seeing how OpenAI has dramatically changed workflow in companies, productivity in companies, how it's made the average companies like lifespan longer, or cut down hours worked for a worker. Those numbers need to be actually realized.
Right. And just to give you the listeners a little bit of context, if y'all don't know this, ChatGPT was the fastest growing consumer application in history,
I think
like
it
bar
has like
none.
700 or 800 million users per week
Active, yeah. But
active.
in the first just 5 days of launching, it already had 1 million users,
Yeah.
which is crazy. And then by within 2 months, so this is what we're talking November 22 at this point, it had over 100 million monthly active users.
It was truly remarkable. I mean, I still remember trying it in 2022 and it blew me away. I showed it to my brother-in-law and my father-in-law, and now they're active users. They use Codex and they use all things, Sora, all little tools of ChatGPT. So yeah, it's profoundly changed people's lives.
Yeah, it's funny. I think you were the person who told me like, "Hey, have you tried prompting something within ChatGPT?" I actually didn't know how to use it when it first came out, and I was like, What is this?" And you're just like, "Oh, you just type in a prompt and just get an answer for it." So, it's like a chat bot, but like much much smarter than any traditional chat bot you've ever used. So when I went in and used it, I was like, "This is phenomenal." Because when I think users started using it, we were already on like GPT-3. I want to say the model was what was released to that the majority of the public at least was using at that time.
Yeah. No, I think for a lot of people, it was a game changer, right? Um, Fast forward to today, every person that I've spoken to about ChatGPT or introduced them, it is so pervasive in their life. People use it to write emails, to create documents, vet legal documents, vet insurance documents, medical records. Shit. I mean, people, I know in my circle are using that thing to write texts.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like if I mean, it may be in some way making people productive and better, I guess, in terms of communication, but at the same time, I don't know, maybe it's making people dumber because we're not doing this stuff on our own.
yeah. I mean, I guess one could argue that it's great for the mundane, everyday, repeatable tasks that you just have to get done, and just letting something like that do it actually frees up more of your time. Because I still think the one thing any of these chatbots and AI can't do yet, it can't create new creative ideas,
I
right?
think it's getting there. I mean, you're talking about like more like sentient thoughts and you
Yeah,
know,
cause look at it this way, right? Like whatever creative aspects it can create, like video or come up with a picture of some kind, whatever you prompt it, it's more or less trained on what already exists,
yeah.
right? And in order for it to completely create a brand new idea, I don't think it's just there yet and capable of doing that. Like it can't really make up an imaginary character and figure out the way it's going to look, right? But if you prompt it, create like draw me a picture of a dragon, it knows what to do because it's seen pictures of dragons before, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think it's gotten to a point where you're like create this, you know, and again, this might be a bad example, but like it's not going to be able to come up with a completely new out there idea and be able to give that to you because it's just not something that's existed before. And I still feel like humans are the only like we're the ones that are able to come up and create those ideas and figure that out because without all of human knowledge you wouldn't be able to feed these models.
Definitely. No, that's a really good point. Original thought is definitely not something that AI is capable of doing yet, but
Right, right.
I would also not put the odds against it that it can't do that in like a decade, you know.
Maybe it's kind of a, I don't know if scary is the word that I want to use, but it'll definitely be interesting to see what it comes up with. Like you can, like, for example, again, coming back to it being fed data, like if you wanted to come up with new medications and research and whatever it is, gene therapy or whatever, it's going to look at all of the previous data and try and connect some dots and be like, okay, here's a possible route out, right? And I think it's great for that. It's just, can it come up with something completely new for something that's never happened before? That's my
Hmm.
question.
Well, that's debatable at best, I guess, for you.
Indeed, it is. But just for sake of time, I want to move into our next topic, and we're going to talk about your boy the D Trumps, and
Trump.
we're gonna recap your boy's year so far, because it's been almost a year since we voted this bro in.
Where are the Epstein files, bro?
That's what we all want to know.
Come on, son. Drop that shit.
Well, we have some released emails that we're not going to talk about on this podcast per se, because we haven't read all of them. We're just being honest here, but we will get to it at some point.
Diddy knows.
And apparently Bill Clinton too. So, yeah, let's recap. I mean, where do we start with the D Trumps?
I think the year started off decent. As someone who works in crypto, our industry was extremely optimistic because prior years of Biden administration, I think they were a little bit more antagonistic towards the industry, probably having the boot on the neck of the industry. And Trump is more of like, do whatever the fuck you want, no rigid regulation, and yes to I don't know, DeFi protocols, and all kinds of like unique innovation going on in the industry can run without the fear of getting arrested. I think that part really helped push forward innovation in crypto, and I would argue that many industries also felt that was going to be the case, right? So the optimism was definitely there, but execution in many aspects has been extremely poor.
Yeah, I mean, we have what is that? Trump coin? There's Trump coin out there, right?
Yeah, man, that motherfucker robbed everybody.
But his sons, Eric and Don Jr., they have their own exchange of some kind, right? Or is it just like
I think they have this thing called World Liberty Finance, which is somewhat of like a crypto project. They are invested in sort of, they have their hands in many different projects. So I do think that, yes, it's weird, right? Like in one way I can see that, yeah, these are the people who are enabling the industry to push forward. But then at the same time, I'm like, bro, do you have to be invested in like all this shit? And at the same time, like pump your own bags, Like,
I think he would answer yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I get it. But it is the height of sort of, corruption, if you will.
Yeah. So I guess, crypto is one thing. Seems like it's kind of looking up with this administration on how they do things. But what about the other side of the way things are running right now with the economy? I'm talking about the T word.
Tariffs.
Tariffs?
I don't know. Tariffs are weird. I kind of understand the intention of the tariffs, but at the same time, again, execution is poor. I think you ruffle a lot of feathers, especially in a time where America, I think, needs more allies than enemies. And even at that point, like, you kind of have pissed off your allies, and you're making somewhat of a neutral figure in the world, which is China, more of an enemy. And you're driving more people who are your allies, into the hands of your enemy. So I don't know. I think the tariff, again, execution has been extremely poor. I think more Americans have been hurt by it. I don't know about this stupid tariff stimmy check or dividend, whatever the fuck he's talking about. I don't know how that's going to work. And I also don't know how that's a net positive for society.
Yeah, I mean, the whole tariff argument, it's in the Supreme Court right now, right? We're just waiting to see what the Supreme Court justices say about it, because the argument is that it is not within the president's power to just blanketly release tariffs out there without congressional approval, right? Because the people who actually give the approval for tariffs are, at least on a broad scale like this, is Congress. Because and I could be wrong about this, but I think the only time the president can actually take invasive action on the economy and tariff related items is if, there's something going on with a country that, I don't want to say in war with America, but if there's like a conflict going on you're trying to sanction them, you're trying to do whatever, you can have some play on that. But what they're arguing is, yeah, I mean, you have some presidential power there on a conflicting nation or a nation that we're at war with or whatever it is, or, a nation that we're not, for argument's sake, happy with. But that's one or two nations. You're tariffing the entire world. Almost every major country, even countries that we don't even like, we don't even have the greatest trade relations with, or trade volumes with and quantities with.
Yeah.
So like, how can you use the specific legislation or law from back in the day, enact that to say that we're in an emergency or a crisis, because this is not an emergency.
I think for the most part, Trump was trying to go for like a shakedown with other countries. It's kind of like you walk into a room and, America realizes like, oh, I got a gun. I'm going to shake down every motherfucker in here. And then you realize your gun is not a gun, it's a fucking sausage. And everybody sees it and they're like, the fuck, dude, I'm going to slap the shit out of you. And all the world is realizing like, oh, no, you don't have that kind of power over me anymore. Veer Das, like the comedian, often says that America is like, the hot girl in high school. And now that everybody's grown up, America's not so hot anymore. Everybody else has gotten hotter and successful and richer. And we're just also doing decent, but we're not, king shit anymore. Right? I think that's where America needs to realize, like, you don't really want to start bullying people into doing things that you want to do. You just need to show people, like, America is still the beacon of hope for the world. Innovation still starts here. I still think that to a degree, American dream is real. We've lost our path of it, but I think this is the country to still be in, right?
So do you think these tariff dividend stimmy checks are the way that we push things forward?
Definitely not. I don't think that's a good idea at all. I mean, on one hand, we see inflation slowly creeping up. And on the other, if you start giving people $2,000 stimmy checks, the thing that's sort of plaguing the country already is feeling like you're being left out of the economy. And so handing people a $2,000 check is not going to do anything other than make them want to gamble that money, right? Or excessively spend, in which case, again, driving up inflation further.
Right. And I was just about to say, if we unpack that, that's exactly something that could happen. You're going to have people who spend money, inflation's going to go up. But the way that they're going to play it off is like, look, my tariffs did what they needed to do, and they're bringing extra money into the country, into the economy. And you, the taxpayer, are getting an ROI on our increased tariffs. So I think my perspective is it almost looks like here's some money to show you that it's working, but it's not really going to help our economy in any way. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of small businesses out there that I've looked at and researched that are simply just hurting, right? And I think the latest thing that happened, if I'm not wrong, is there are going to be over 100% tariffs on Italy for pasta.
That's crazy. I haven't even heard that.
Yeah, so like if...
I don't fucking care for pasta, but I'm offended.
Yeah, I mean... but Americans eat millions of pounds of pasta per year. We're probably, okay, put it this way. Out of Italy's like pasta market and their exports, America has 10% of that market.
That's crazy.
Just think about it that way. It's millions and millions of pounds of pasta that effectively are going to 100% tax rate or tariff rate on, because it is a tax at the end of the day, that is going to be affected. So restaurants are going to raise their prices on pasta. You aren't going to be able to buy it at the same price at the grocery store anymore. And this is just the way it's affecting another country importing it into the United States, or exporting it to the United States, I should say. But there's also just companies in the United States that just can't buy from other countries because it's just too expensive to do so.
If there was a contest of any president, trying to torch the country in year one, I'm pretty sure Trump would be at the top of that fucking list.
Torch
Yeah.
the country.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, in terms of torching, that actually reminds me, housing affordability.
Fucked.
I was about to ask, where do you think that is?
Not in a good place for sure.
Do you think Trump had anything to do with that though, or do you think this is just a carryover from the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean that's also a good point. I don't so if we kind of stitch together 2016 all the way to now, it is effectively Trump, Biden, Trump, right? Um Both characters definitely did not help the affordability aspect of America. Um Part of that I think has to do with like the general divide of how people in the middle and lower classes are just feeling again left out of the economy and not able to catch up with the gains of what asset markets and assets in general, like homes, like stock markets, are giving the top percentile of US income earners, right? Because they're just not invested in the same way. And so if you don't give people, like, I think Peter Thiel had this very prescient quote that he wrote to Zuckerberg and some other people in 2020. He basically, I think, just as like a general summary, he talks about how young people are going to be driven towards the idea of socialism because if you feel like you have no stake in the game and you can't afford a house, you're not able to live a decent life, you're going to turn against the very system that you know has brought you this far, right? Because
Mm.
it's not taking you any further. You're going to lean on socialism and you're going to turn on capitalism, and that is something that I'm also not a big fan of socialism. I don't think it progresses society. I think it in fact makes us lazier. But when it comes to like homes and affordability, I don't know, maybe some form of like government subsidy or capping on rents or capping on something related to like, being able to have people afford homes needs to be done.
Yeah. So just as an example, it's the statistic I think is between 2010 and 2022, U.S. home prices rose by 74%, right?
That's crazy.
And wages in that same time period only grew 54%. So in terms of outpacing, housing is outpacing like wage growth, right? And the trend became even more pronounced during the pandemic, right? So from January 2020 to September 2025, the growth in monthly payments for mid-tier homes was like 74%, bottom tier homes was 78%. And that far exceeded the growth in hourly wages, which was only 25%.
I mean, listen, when it comes to stats, I don't think you need to tell me with more numbers that we're fucked. I'll tell you some interesting stats though that I know. The average home buyer's age right now is 59. Did you know that?
I did not know
That's
that.
fucking crazy, dude.
I thought it was in the 40s.
No, it's 59. It's 59. And the fact that the solution of the current government is to say, oh, I know how we can make homes more affordable. Let's give them a 50-year mortgage.
Oh my God. Yeah, I read about that.
Dude,
did you actually do the breakdown?
I have done the breakdown. I saw the breakdown. I didn't do it myself, but I saw the breakdown. Basically, like, I think it's like a $250,000 or $300,000 home at a 30-year mortgage, you know, whatever the current interest rate is. Let's just say your monthly cost is like $2,300. Okay, that's a 30-year. A 50-year, maybe that saves you $200 a year. However, because it's 50 years, that $300,000 or $400,000 home is more like $800,000 that you're going to be paying over the lifespan.
And you're saving $200-$300 a month. Was
Yeah,
it? Yeah.
You might as well go fucking gamble on meme coins, bro. I got some meme coins to show you.
Did you hear about the other big plan to kind of boost affordability, portable mortgages?
No, I have not heard this.
So portable mortgages are more or less like a way to help people move into a different home, but basically carry the terms over into that new home, more or less. So what it does is it keeps your interest rate intact, but it just moves the property address from wherever your new property, from where you live to wherever the new property is going to be. But
Wow.
I don't think that solves the affordability crisis. That just solves like oh, okay, people can kind of move a little bit and maybe might increase more inventory, but is that going to really help the affordability crisis?
You know what the Trump administration, you know, makes me think of? These are like the fucking guys trying to slap on band-aids at the bottom of the Titanic that just got hit by an iceberg. They're like, how many fucking band-aids can we slap on this bitch to make sure we don't sink? And
Yeah.
they just don't get it. I think they're just so delusional and removed from what is plaguing society and their constituents, that they don't fully realize the scope of the problem and the magnitude of it.
Okay, so let me ask you this in terms of just portable mortgages. If you were looking at a new property, and you were locked into say like a really good rate, let's say like 3%, 2.99%, and you had a 30-year mortgage, if portable mortgages were going to be a thing, would you move to a new place and keep your original interest rate in terms? Is that something that you would consider?
I think many would consider it, right? Like, if you are in the if you're just an average person just trying to live your life and you just want to, I don't know, you want a decent home, you want to be able to um keep your family in that home for X amount of time, and you're not trying to use it as an investment property, I think most would make that choice, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's a good choice.
Right.
Um, I also don't know if it's a bad choice, but it's a choice. And I don't know what other options we have nowadays, you know?
Here's my thing, and this actually kind of is a great segue into our next topic, but I don't know if I I don't know if I would consider moving simply because I don't know where I'd get my next job, right? Like the job market is so fucked right now that even if I wanted to move, I wouldn't know where I'd want to move or where the jobs are.
I mean, I think people in general are just moving less, right? You are where you are and you kind of just want to stay around that, whether it's because of friends or family or your kids' at school. Yeah, I think there's also, statistics that you could pull up about how many people are actually, moving across states or across cities to be able to start a new life. And I think that number has empirically gone down. And so I don't understand this new, you know, uh, whatever like temporary solution that they're trying to apply, where they think that people are just going to spontaneously like get up and move to try to find a new job in this, new home. It's just, again,
So do you actually think the job market is tough, or are people just creating hoopla around this?
I do think that the job market is tough, and I've witnessed it firsthand. When I got laid off in 2023, 2024, it became increasingly difficult because you see like hundreds of jobs that are out there, and I'm applying to a lot of them, and not just like your generic like LinkedIn application. I'm sending emails to recruiters, and I did even those like 5-minute like Loom videos. I did a lot of stuff, and
Hmm.
it kind of makes you think like, oh well, is it just me? Then fast forward like maybe a year later, I realized no, 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 it's not just me. It's a whole lot of other people. They're going through the same thing. And going to New York, I also learned that, friends and people and colleagues, many people are in the same situation. And in fact, they have been for the last 2 to 3 years. And I think there's almost a silent suffering that's happening in America. And that temperature check is, in my opinion, very misunderstood.
Now, are you talking about people kind of in our age cohort that are trying to switch jobs or are laid off trying to find new jobs, or are you talking about, or have you talked to people that are fresh out of college looking for jobs?
I've actually talked to all three. I'm in my mid 30s, and I definitely know for a fact that um, many people are my age or similar, plus or minus a few years, and they have seen significant changes in the job market and job prospects. I also know that speaking to young people and college students, they're increasingly more anxious about how the landscape for jobs is going to look, when they do graduate. I talked to my younger fraternity brothers from my, alma mater, and I know for a fact that some of my younger fraternity brothers have not found a job 3 months, 6 months, post college, right? So it is a very serious thing that's happening in America, and I don't think people are paying enough attention to it.
So here's one side of the argument that some people are kind of saying. Like, they're saying, okay, well, a lot of the people that are graduating from college and not finding these jobs are not high skilled, high training jobs. They're, and I hate to say this, but this is what they're saying, more or less bullshit degrees, right? Like, you're coming out of college with these bullshit degrees that you know you're not going to do anything with. You're going to spend a lot of money on it. And then on top of that, you're also complaining about not finding a job, right?
I've heard this argument, and I don't know how much I agree with it. I mean, on one end, yes, there are such things as bullshit degrees. Like if you're graduating in, I don't know, like European classical arts, like I don't know what the heck you do with that. I mean, that's, again, going to be a you issue for you to find a job. But at the same time, I don't know if these are the people who are going out and complaining about not being able to find a job in like tech or finance. I think that there are actual people who graduated in technology or in finance who are suffering a similar fate to the guy who just graduated in European classical arts, right? That, I don't know. I don't know how you sort of square off those two realities because I think both things are true.
Right. Yeah. I've personally heard of, some people who are like, well, I graduated with a computer science degree and um, where I want to apply for jobs, there's just not any jobs. There's not enough coders because or any jobs for computer science related to coding because they're just going to have coding being done by AI. So like, was there any use for me to go to school, do the right thing, get the degree and the job that people were saying is going to make you a lot of money, and ultimately I come out of school with $250,000 in debt, let's say, and there's just no job for me. So I've done everything right, and now the system basically screwed me. That's one side of the argument. But, and like I was saying, the other side of the argument is like, well, yeah, I mean, like, you can still apply those skills into other things, just go find something else, right? It's just the other side of the argument. The way I'm looking at it is, yeah, maybe you could apply yourself somewhere else, but if the pool is just shrinking altogether, there's not much you can do about the pool shrinking, right? You can't just dive into a pool that is getting smaller and smaller.
I mean, I think, again, going back to sort of the numbers, unemployment for young people, and I think young people is defined as like, I don't know, 20 to 30 or something. I think that unemployment rate is closer to like 10%. That's pretty high. That's like recession territory for young people, that is.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's slowing down. I don't know how much of that you can attribute directly to AI and its, overlord style, ability to take jobs, because I don't know if AI is there yet. You could make the argument that companies are cutting hiring in general. I think that's fair, but I don't know if companies are outright firing at the same time because of that.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely something to just kind of see where it goes. I can see both sides of the argument, I guess. I mean, we'll just kind of see as time goes on where this goes. But what I want to get into next is, let's just go into our last segment and take a national temperature. So we'll pull the big ass thermometer out and shove it up America's backside and see where we're gauging ourselves at.
Well, I mean, I think our conversation today is more or less what we have talked about being the temperature of America. Young people feeling they don't have a stake in the system, and increasingly feeling like they're not able to sort of keep up with the gains that are being gained by some parts of society. That's just not young people, but I would say that's a lot of people. I would say 40 to 50% of the population, maybe even more than that, is feeling it. And at the same time, what you have is just internal anxiety of what direction the country is headed to with the ICE raids and, tariffs and just overall, just like
Inflation
noise,
fears.
inflation fears. Like it's just noise, noise, noise. And I think everybody's on edge.
Well, I feel like one person who's made a lot of noise is your boy Zoran Mamdani.
Dude.
Mamdani. Get the name right. Mamdani.
Mamdani. I was fortunate to be in New York when he was elected. And I think the city overall was pretty happy. There's, I'm sure, some people who thought, okay, he's just going to be average, unsure about if he's going to be doing anything close to what he promised. But I don't see Zoran as, someone who is a radical politician. He is nothing but a product of the environment that he's born into. He's doing his best, which, in my opinion, is his best intentions to solve the problem for his people.
Here's one thing about that, though. A lot of people are just saying that, like, well, yeah, he won because he's literally just saying things people haven't heard and want to hear. Like, I'm going to make buses free. I'm going to freeze rents. Yeah, okay, I get that. But where are the actionable plans to put that in place?
Yeah, it's like, the fifth grade, president of the school says, like, hey, I want fucking Kool-Aid in the water fountains.
Free lunches for everyone.
Free
right?
lunches. Yeah, that shit's not happening. Yeah. I think that he's going to be restrained in many ways by just, government bureaucracy, and really just how society functions, in my opinion. But he may walk the city into maybe one step in the right direction. I being in the city for almost a whole month made me see different aspects of life for a lot of people, and it's not that colorful. There's definitely, again, like we've spoken about, a bit of a more silent suffering that's happening, and it's very palpable. And he is the right person to at least address it.
I think Mamdani has come into a New York that requires a lot of fixing, first of all, right? Like, New York, being the mayor of New York, first of all, is a lot of work. There's a lot of, I don't want to say red tape, because, I mean, it is the government at the end of the day. That's inherent. But I feel like he's kind of taken on this enormous task. And, as far as from an experience level goes, he's just been an assemblyman, I think it was, right before that. So he's taking on an enormous task as a more or less a newbie, right? And I'm not saying there's anything inherently wrong with that, but I'm just saying he's a new guy. It's a tall order. It's great to tell people what they want to hear, but this guy's got 4 years to make it work. And if he doesn't make it work, that puts, let's call it, the Democratic agenda at risk.
I agree. I do think he'll be fine. I think overall, it's not like the Democrats are doing that great anyway. They fucking suck. So they probably need like someone like Mamdani to shake things up and maybe show them that this is maybe the direction of what the country wants, the people want. And, it's good to have fresh young blood rather than old fucking vampires in the, in the Senate, in the House, at all aspects of the government ladder. And it's important to show people that young people can have good ideas and it's okay to try something different. Even if they do fail, I don't know if it'll be failure because, he's like sexually harassing people like that fucking, so-and-so person. Hey, I didn't say it, bro. Allegedly, I guess. Allegedly. But, it is what it is, and I wish him the best of luck. I hope he kicks ass.
Yeah. I wish him the best of luck also. I'm excited to kind of see where he goes and what he does with this. Another quick subtopic that I just wanted to hit on real quick, just gauging the national temperature. Another thing that's kind of popped onto the radar is we're seeing car repossessions balloon.
Damn.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of people like car repo. I guess repo men. Let's just call them that, and what they are. They've have been repossessing a lot of cars recently, and they say it's only going up. And it's all across the spectrum, from Accords, like, simple car like Accords and Corollas, all the way up to BMWs, and just people are not able to afford their car notes. There's an affordability crisis going on. There's inflation and stuff. Cars are getting more expensive. The average car costs over $50,000 new nowadays, right? So they're just like, repossessions are going up. This is the highest default rate that we've seen auto loans, like past 60 days. That number has exponentially gone up.
I had no idea about this, but I'm glad you brought it up. I think repos, majority of the things that we spoke about are nothing but they are symptoms of an environment that we've created in the country where you will see more and more things break in the system. And repos are one, personal loans are another.
Right. That's a good point.
Personal loans are skyrocketing because people need some sort of, saving grace to be able to just afford their life. They come at a pretty costly interest rate, upwards of 10% or sometimes upwards of 15%. But people need them. And, you could kind of see the offerings from like SoFi's and many other, newer neobanks of the world that are coming up, offering these loans to desperate people. And I don't know what else you can do other than take these loans, because if you're already in that position and you feel like you need this loan to survive, or you need this loan for whatever reason, a baby, a car, a home, then you're going to take it. And again, it's an extra sort of liability on your personal, balance sheet, but that's the state of the country, man.
I think, and again, this is more of like a personal opinion, obviously, but I feel like if you're getting to the point where you want to take a personal loan, one of the only reasons why you should do it is to consolidate debt, and that's it. Because if you have 5 credit cards with, let's say, $50,000 spread across those 5 credit cards, it's much easier to get a $50,000 personal loan. You pay off the credit cards, and then you just make one monthly payment instead of making 5 payments over 5 cards and getting the interest rates like over 20% on each one. Even if you get like a 12 or 14% interest rate on a personal loan, that's a lot lower than what you'd pay across all those cards anyway. You consolidate it and you pay it off. That could be a smart thing to do and have in your financial tool belt if you want to consolidate debt. But the primary rule is you don't get the debt back up on the credit cards again.
Good point.
Right?
Yeah, no, that's also a fair point. I don't think people who are taking these loans are thinking that far into the future, or they're thinking of these things at all. I think it's a form of desperation, and again, it kind of goes back to the topic of, that we're ending with, which is the temperature check. And I think the temperature of the country is things are hot and people need money.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely there. I could always use more money.
I think we all could, bro. We need some of that, some of that stimmy check.
That stimmy. Let's get it going. All right, guys. That's our podcast for today, our first one. And I think it was the best one yet. So
probably going to be the best one ever. So
yeah, I think that, well, I don't know about that. Maybe we'll do better next time, but
yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I want to hear what people have to say in the comments section. Yeah, and let us know what you guys want us to discuss next time, wherever you listen to these podcasts.
Yes, that's right. If you missed something or you got a topic you want us to overanalyze next, just hit the comment section and we'll try and get to the best ones. So until next time, folks, peace.
Later.
crush out. Pour the crush out. Pour the crush out. Pour the crush out. Bend.